Check, check, check. Hello. My panel that is on stage, we're just really quickly going to go from my left to right. Just say hello and your name, and then we'll make sure your mic is good to go, and that's it. So we'll start with Dr. Andreyko.
Testing, hello.
Thank you.
Hello.
One more.
Hello.
Thank you.
Hello, Andrew Serloff.
Great.
Good evening, Johnny Floro.
Okay.
Hi, this is Jeff Waters.
One more time, sorry.
Hi, this is Jeff Waters.
I'll be up in a sec. Go ahead.
Okay.
Good evening, Scott Analine.
And next.
Good evening, Charlie Goche.
And next.
Hello, John Orsini. Am I good?
You're good.
we want we want to make sure that we're being respectful of your time, and so we're going to get started here in just about a minute. So if you guys need to make any last-minute stops in the restroom or anything like that, now is the time. We're going to get started in about a minute.
All right, everyone. Good evening. My name is John Kuzma. I'm the board president for the Quaker Valley School Board. On behalf of the Quaker Valley School Board, I'd like to extend a warm welcome to each of you as we open this community panel discussion on the new high school project. It's an honor to have you join us here tonight as we continue along on this crucial journey together for the future of the district. I graduated from Quaker Valley High School many years ago, and looking back at that time, it was apparent that the high school was going to need some serious attention. That's probably an understatement, but it's one that I'm sure that those who have graduated before and since, as well as the parents and community members who have been through this building recently, will agree with me on. As a district, we began to explore a solution for the high school as far back as 2002. So it's been a very long time coming. I joined the board 10 years ago, and over that time, the school board has seriously studied many options for a new high school. In fact, evaluating this building and the Leetsdale site was the first option we evaluated. It was only after determining the site here in Leetsdale was inadequate for the future needs of the district that the board pivoted to a search for a new location. Given how much due diligence and effort has been expended to date, if the community wasn't passionate about seeing this project through to the end, the conversations and work would have stopped years ago. Our commitment to providing the best education for our students is unwavering, and the construction of a new high school is a crucial step to meet that challenge in the future. Throughout the process, we valued the ideas and questions many of you have provided in prior community engagement sessions. The input has been invaluable in shaping this future community asset. Tonight's forum is an opportunity to provide an update on our progress, address any misconceptions, and to set the record straight with accurate and transparent information from district officials, board members, and our partners, each with a history and expertise related to the new proposed high school. The event this evening is a platform for open and constructive dialogue. We encourage you to share your thoughts and seek clarification on any concerns stemming from questions around the project. Tonight is an opportunity for productive discussions that will help make us informed decisions. Before I turn the podium over to Dr. Andreyko, I want to acknowledge the contributions of the team that helped to make this evening possible. First, I'd like to thank Superintendent Dr. Tammy Andreyko, Assistant Superintendent Dr. Surloff, and all of the members of the executive leadership team, especially Charlie Goche, the district's Director of Facilities, Michelle Dietz, the Director of Communications, Scott Aneline, Director of Finance, and Karen Dobda, Director of Innovation and Strategic Initiatives. But I'll just note that the entire executive leadership team and the ALT also helped in bringing this evening together. Also contributing to the evening is Austin Wolfert on sound, Dr. Deborah Cabelli, high school principal, along with her staff, and the students in Key Club and Student Council who generously volunteered their time for childcare services this evening. Of course, our teachers remain a focus for the district. Special thanks to each of the teachers and staff here at the high school. I'd also like to thank my fellow board members for their time and contributions towards this evening, and to those serving on the panel. Finally, I'd like to welcome and thank our subject matter experts who the district has engaged to make the new high school project a reality. Each of the thought leaders who have come here this evening will be introduced by Dr. Andreyko in just a few minutes. In closing, I'll share that over the years, I've spoken with many parents of young children who eagerly anticipate construction of a modern high school that will help equip their students for the needs of the 21st century. This next generation of learners is the reason our community started on this journey together. We have reached a point where it is time to build, and we're excited you could be here to hear more about the progress and the future of this project. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I don't know, Austin, are we okay with feedback?
Okay, thank you. Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Tammy Andreyko. I'm the proud superintendent of schools here at Quaker Valley. It's so good to see so many folks here, familiar faces, new faces. Very excited to share some great information with you this evening. And we obviously have people at home as well, and so glad to have so many people who care so deeply about this community and our children gathered in one place. A bit of housekeeping to get started. The restrooms are right outside the center door to your right, and then down the hall, and then you'll find them down there if you should need to use those facilities. There will not be a planned break this evening, so just go ahead, and if you need to go, please take that upon yourself. We don't have a planned break. We are streaming the event this evening, so if you did not know, please be aware that cameras are recording the event. Our agenda for this evening is designed to help ensure that you are well informed and excited about our project, just like we are. So we'll go ahead and get started. First, the first point on our agenda will be a comprehensive video overview of the new high school project. This video will give you a visual understanding of the project's scope, its design, and the opportunities it will bring to our students and to our community. This project, as Mr. Kuzma shared with you, has a very long history, and tonight is the opportunity to put the students and staff first and spark a new era here at Quaker Valley High School. After the video, we have gathered a panel of experts who will share an overview of the frequently asked questions that have been posed regarding this project or may be posed later. Their insights and expertise will help address many of the concerns or queries that have arisen during this process. And on stage, if I can ask Karen to put those slides up, we have our panel of experts. First, John Orsini. He is the principal of BSHM Architects. Mr. Orsini joined BSHM in 2008, has been practicing architecture since 1991. And throughout the years, he's built a diverse portfolio of work with concentration on institutional projects. Project types of fine and professional arts facilities, libraries, and academic buildings. His primary focus has been the development of buildings and program schematic design through contract administration. Since 2008, John has worked extensively on K-12 projects, and that's what brought his work to us, serving in all aspects of professional design for a K-12 school. Next on our list, Don Palmer, who is our school district solicitor from Gehring, Rudder, and Beam. Much of Mr. Palmer's practice includes the representation of public school districts and municipalities with regard to a multitude of legal issues. Formerly as an associate counsel with the Pennsylvania Department of Education, he is highly experienced and well-known in the area of education law, particularly general school law, labor matters, special education, and student rights. In addition, his work with municipal practices, he represents many property owners, lenders, purchasers, developers, and landlords and tenants with real estate. Next, we have Mr. Jeff Phillips, our civil engineer. He's owner and principal engineer for Phillips & Associates Incorporated. He's over 35 years of experience managing, planning, and designing and coordinating the construction of a wide variety of commercial, industrial, institutional, governmental, and residential site development projects from project to conception through construction. His experience in managing multi-million-dollar projects as well as multiple projects for corporate clients in developing in several states, he is well-known and knowledgeable for federal, state, county, and local regulations and has negotiated with regulatory agencies and commissions to deliver successfully permitted projects. Next, Mr. John Thomas, our program manager from Thomas & Williamson. Mr. Thomas began his progressive 40-plus years in career working for several local architecture and engineering firms, first as a drafter, later as a designer, project engineer, project manager, and project executive. He has experience in a wide range of projects, including data centers, industrial facilities, wind energy, and high-end residential projects. He co-founded the Pittsburgh-based firm of Thomas & Williamson in 1998 and began his focus on planning, designing, the construction of public schools. On the stage, we also have panelists from our district school board, as well as our team. Mr. Scott Anderline, Director of Finance and Operations, Mr. Charlie Goche, Director of Facilities and Operations, Dr. Andrew Surloff, my right hand, the Assistant Superintendent, Deborah Cabelli, QV High School Principal, Mr. Gianno Floro, School Board Facilities Chair, and Mr. Jeff Waters, School Board Finance Chair and Treasurer. I know that we said thank you, but it's not thank you enough to everyone who worked to make this happen this evening. So thank you to everyone behind the scenes, in front of the scenes, gathering cards, whatever it may be. You'll have an opportunity to certainly spend some time with Mrs. Michelle Dietz, our Director of Communications, this evening as she serves as our moderator. Following the presentation section of this meeting, we will open the floor to questions and answers. We've received a few questions from the community in advance of this presentation, but we encourage you to ask questions should you have them at the end of the presentation. Finally, at the end of the workshop, we will certainly share with you again how to find our our Blueprint QV webpage. That's what I want to say, because that is really that is your main place for information. We have been gathering reports, information, data, videos, and so forth for years, and it's the really clearinghouse for all that information for you. So I'd like to express my personal gratitude for you joining us this evening. Your involvement and engagement are essential to the success of this project. I look forward to a bright future building together, and I thank you, and I share with everyone, please, let's make the discussion informative, respectful, and productive. And as always, what I usually say is it's a great day to be a Quaker. So at this time, Mr. Wolford, if you'd put up the video for me. Hello, Quaker Valley community. I am delighted to share some exciting updates on the progress and features of our new Quaker Valley High School. As we embark on the construction journey together, let's celebrate the remarkable events and improvements that are coming our way. Our current high school is a historic site built back in 1926 and has served us well over the years, but it's time for a transformation that matches the needs of our learners and our educators. I want to emphasize that our new high school project has been meticulously planned, taking into consideration the expertise of architects, engineers, and educators, and community stakeholders. Safety, security, and contemporary learning spaces have been the foundation of our design work. It's vital to recognize that every decision regarding this project has been guided by deep commitment to the well-being of our students and staff. We have engaged professionals who are experts in their fields, ensuring that every aspect of the high school is designed to meet the highest standards for all. Those with professional credentials and contextual knowledge who are able to accurately assess the intricate details of our planning process make up our team. The project's foundation is built on years of data and research, not hearsay or conjecture. The student experience and the future of our district is coming to life in this new school. This new school represents a significant improvement in our community's future and an investment. Our educators and students deserve a state-of-the-art facility that enables them to deliver an unparalleled educational experience. We deeply value the inherent worth of this project for our students and staff, and the property values of this community as a whole. It's not just about constructing a new building. The benefits will extend far beyond the classroom.
Hello, I'm Deborah Riccobelli, Quaker Valley High School principal. This monumental project has been decades in the making, and it would not be possible without valuable input from our exceptional teachers, staff, and students. Together, we have shaped a state-of-the-art facility that will foster innovation and provide an enriching environment for generations to come. Let's hear from some of those staff.
Hi, my name is Patty Gilmore, and I'm an administrative assistant at the high school, and I've worked here for 25 years. My kids graduated from here, and now my grandchildren will be graduating from here. the new high school will create a sense of belonging to the community to help define leadership with everyone, especially teachers, staff members, and most important, the students. And I feel like the new building will make it a more inviting place for families to visit us.
The Library Media Center has always been the central part of the current school, and the way that it is set up now, it will continue to be that way, which will allow the librarian to interact and connect with not only students, but teachers, different people that come in and out of the building, develop curriculum, and continue to be a central part for students to use resources and media and things that they need to be successful during their time at school.
I'm delighted to reveal that our Quaker Valley High School is taking shape as a state-of-the-art learning environment designed to foster innovation and academic excellence. The site plan and its components have two entry points, one near Beaver Street and the other near Quaker Heights neighborhood. The entry sequence and roadways were designed to provide separate locations for student drop-off, parking, as well as bus drop-off. Each has its own location, which limits cross-traffic of buses, pedestrians. In addition, the site includes amenities such as secure student exterior teaching spaces, a secure exterior area next to the cafeteria, and student lawns for gathering. The site includes pedestrian options throughout the campus and a tree-lined entry that overlooks the river valley.
This site also provides more parking than we currently have. We will more than double our parking capacity at the new location. Geotechnical studies are well underway as we wanted to reestablish the due diligence that was done during the purchase of the property to now coincide with the specific location of the building and many other elements. This added work was approved by the board to ensure that geotechnical engineering will be completed with confidence, so our new facility will be safe with the surrounding geographic region. In addition to studying the engineering of this new building, it is paramount that our work includes improvements to stormwater management, pedestrian and local traffic, as well as little disturbance to the natural topography and landscape as possible. We are improving this site. The exterior landscape will reflect a commitment to the aesthetics and functionality of the region. The front entry has been revised to include additional windows for visibility for our administration and our chief of police. The natural light and open facade creates a more welcoming space, and an attractive use of brick is reminiscent of the brick used in our original building. This is a warm welcome, and it's not just related to the appearance of the building, it also includes thoughtful planning related to handicap parking and building accessibility measures for all. Visitors during the school day will enter into this location, and their needs will be met with a newly designed administrative suite. Parent meetings, conferences, and small group sessions will be able to be held within this space. The landscape design includes stone walls throughout the campus that match the walls of the roads in our community. Terraced stone walls near the lower level provide a pre-function space used for community gatherings, outdoor instruction, and recreational use. Our new high school will feature spacious classrooms with cutting-edge technology, interactive whiteboards, and flexible seating arrangements to accommodate various learning styles and promote active learning. Our commitment to science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics, also known as STEAM education, is being taken to new heights with forward-thinking and adaptable spaces. Almost everything is on wheels, and furniture and other elements are reconfigurable so it can be flexible from day to day or lesson to lesson. In addition, there are support areas in the makerspace, a fabrication studio, and our kilns for our art rooms. Students will have hands-on opportunities to experiment, create, and explore, preparing them for the challenges of the future.
Matt Dado, I teach technology and engineering at the high school. After some of our conversations, we discussed how we use the space right now and how we would want to use the space in the future. So it was just more talking about like if the kids are going from the computers moving over to some type of assembly space and where the machines should be. Gives us a little input as a teacher, because it's, ultimately we're going to be in that space, and it's something that we have the input, and we also can bounce ideas off the students to get their input as well, so it's great.
Hi, I'm Nina Strelick. I teach art at the high school. It ranges from everything from ceramics to painting and drawing, mosaic, sculpture. Wow. The feedback has been amazing, and the communication with the architects. They really do want to know what we need to be more successful in this new space. So it's been a great collaborative conversation of what they've done in the past, what we need that's specific here to our students and the courses we teach. And I'm impressed that when we mention something that maybe they haven't done before, they went, oh wow, that's a really great idea. Yes, we can do that. Or, storage is an issue, and they really have been wanting to make this a easy process for everyone, but definitely our feedback is appreciated, and you can tell it's being thoughtfully introduced into this new building.
The new school is a place where students can get connected. They can collaborate. Spacious common areas, cozy reading nooks, and large and small instruction areas are created in response to feedback from students and teachers in their focus groups. A newly designed space for our student-run cafe called the QV Daily Grind is located within the heart of the building. It will offer a sense of community and belonging and develop job skills for our students. Our athletic facilities are also getting a major upgrade. From a modern gymnasium to outdoor tennis courts and practice fields, our students will have the resources they need to excel in sports and physical education. The new gym will seat 1,100 students, making it a destination for events, concerts, and competitions. And let's not forget the performing arts. Our new auditorium will be the hub of creativity and self-expression, providing a platform for our students and staff to shine. The new auditorium will seat at least 750 audience members, which will finally allow us to have an assembly for all of our students in grades 9 through 12. The lower entrance, which will be used for after-hour events and activities, will provide an additional layer of accessibility for those guests and students who may need it. We're also embracing sustainability in this project. The increased daylight harvesting found in the cafeteria and many other areas throughout the building creates bright, sunlit spaces for our students and staff. Energy management not only includes energy-efficient lighting, but also eco-friendly building materials. These are just a few features that will make our high school an environmentally conscious space. It is very important to us to engage the possibility of being net zero ready for future generations. I'm incredibly proud of what we're building together. Our new Quaker Valley High School is more than just a building. It's an investment in the future in our community and for the generations to come. This will be our new home for students and staff, and it is long overdue.
We are eagerly anticipating the groundbreaking on our new Quaker Valley High School. On behalf of the administration, faculty and staff, and most importantly our students, we thank you for your unwavering support and enthusiasm as we move forward on the most important project in our district's history. Together, we're building a future for our students that is bright, inspiring, and filled with promise. Our commitment to the Quaker Valley community remains steadfast, and we will continue to work diligently to ensure that our new high school becomes a symbol of pride and achievement where all students design their best future. Thank you.
Thank you, and good evening. I am Michelle Dietz. I am the Director of Communications for the district. Most people know me as the voice on the phone, letting you know that there's a 2-hour delay or cancellation, or I'm the lady with the camera at all of the events. That's how the kids know me. Thank you all tonight for being here with us. We are seeking this evening to answer your questions and really provide you with a full and adequate knowledge of this project. I got to know this project throughout the last year that I've been working for the district and have been able to share the good news of Quaker Valley with many community groups during that time. In our world tour of presentations and small group sessions, we've been fortunate to hear from many community groups and parents, as well as business owners. We've heard lots of questions, and we are kicking off this evening by having our panelists answer some of those frequently asked questions, as well as questions that were submitted online prior to tonight's event. We're going to kick off this evening's events looking at the history of this project and the need for this project by including Dr. Andrew Surloff and Dr. Deb Riccobelli. Thank you guys for joining us this evening to share this historical perspective. We felt that they were appropriate members for this as Dr. Surloff has served in a number of capacities throughout the district, and Dr. Riccobelli is our current high school principal, and so together they really have a nice, thorough body of knowledge related to this. Dr. Sarloff, one of the questions that we hear most often is along the lines of, hasn't the district been talking about this project or this high school for years? Can you walk us through the background of how we came to the decision that we needed to build a new high school?
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. If we could go to the timeline slide, thank you very much, Mrs. Dobda. So I am just going to walk through a quick timeline sort of how we got from where we were to here. But up front, let me share, this is definitely an abridged version. There is a lot of elements that went into getting to this point. And further, we expect that you're going to have a lot of questions this evening on a lot of these areas. So we will obviously take the ones that are most important to you later on. So we'll just start with a few upfront points on the timeline just so we can remind as to where we've been, particularly since the late 90s. So we know discussions of a high school campus in this community actually were had in the 1960s, but that would take us quite some time. So we're going to fast forward to 1998. So in that year, the high school underwent a renovation. That renovation was essentially a cosmetic renovation, and the way you know that is because if you went to high school here many years ago, you'll bump into us and say, it still looks like when I went to high school there. So that would let you know it was mostly cosmetic. There was a few minor increases to the footprint, but at that time, one of the things that occurred, particularly I see a few folks who worked in this building at the time, you'd know that was sort of the first time we encountered a bit of a structural challenge in this building, as there was actually a wall and floor that failed on the north end of the building during that renovation. And so from there, and you'll probably hear it said several times, we've had several other facility studies done on this particular building, and this is not the middle school. The structure and the bones of this building are not the same as what we had at the middle school that allowed that particular building to be fully renovated. That is not the construction that we have here. I'll leave that to the construction folks to kind of talk about if we have any questions there. But at the same time, what also happened is we added the current Chuck Knox Stadium, and in doing so, we removed at that time the baseball field. So if we could go to slide 10, please, Mrs. Dobda. So this is a good view of the current high school campus. And so when you take a look at this, you can obviously see from there, we have very little green space currently on this campus. This is where we are sitting, is a 14-acre campus. Approximately about 12 of those acres are actually usable because 2 of them are the hill that is in the middle. And 9 of those acres, obviously, as everyone knows, lie in a floodplain, and we'll kind of talk about that. But as we stay on this slide and fast forward on the timeline, then in 2004, the parking lot adjacent to the stadium was added, and at that time, the softball field was removed. And so the theme that starts to emerge as we're on a 14-acre site is as we've added amenities to the site, other amenities were lost. So we lost the baseball field, we lost the softball field, and that kind of is sort of the theme that you're going to see as we continue on down this trip, is that we are out of space on this site. And to add more building or anything onto this site would mean a loss of the little bit of green space we have, a loss of those tennis courts, and potentially encroaching on the field. So obviously we're space challenged. So in 2012, and we can go back to that timeline slide. In 2012, the board at that time in the administration still wanted to approach the project through Plan A. Plan A was, can we make the Beaver site work? Frankly, that would be the easiest solution. If this site would be workable, that would be the easiest solution. And so in 2012, the board purchased 2 homes adjacent to the high school on the south end of the building on Beaver Street. And the idea is if there was extra space to the south, that might accommodate additional traffic, additional parking, and perhaps even allow the building to be repositioned on the site if it were to be renovated. Not going to rehash all of that. We know that there were several folks that were not very happy about the fact that the district purchased homes. Even though those homes were for sale, those were not taken by eminent domain or anything of that sort. So we go on to 2013. At that point, the district, again, committed to Plan A, which is staying on the site, hires engineering and architectural firms to analyze the high school for viability and the possibility of building a new high school on the current site. Through that analysis, obviously there are challenges. The board did not completely rule it out. But we're going to go back to that site, if you could please, Mrs. Dobda. That's back to slide 10. So in looking at this site once again in 2016, a group of engineers really dug in and said it's time to start the actual high school construction pre-planning process. And so in 2016, the engineers looked at everything that they could find, both in doing a facility study as well as a site study, and at that time, the district engaged in a soil study. So there were actual borings taken on the current site. And several things were found at that time. So if you could please go to slide 12. So this slide comes from the presentation that actually Mr. Phillips and his firm shared in presenting to the board in 2016. And from there, you can see that the field and the hillside also had several challenges. Again, I will leave the explanation of those challenges of soil conditions and whatnot to the experts. But basically, water undermines this entire site. And so having been a principal here for 10 years, there are still parts of this building that are not usable down in the basement because water essentially runs through it. Because as you know, we talk a lot about being downhill of the current site. Guess what? Where we are sitting is the most downhill neighbor of our current new site. And so the water ends right here in our high school. And it undermines the tennis court, it undermines the building. And because of that water, we have soft soil conditions under this building, which would have obviously required deep foundations to make sure that if we did stay on the site, we were in firm bedrock. We have sand areas, we have a coal seam, and the engineers and the geotechnical folks shared that a lot of money would need to be spent on the foundations as well as the supporting walls in order to stay on this site. So, all of that plus one more issue, slide 11. At that time, new maps from the Army Corps of Engineers also said that you are in a floodplain. So if you're going to build here, there are very specific criteria and permitting obligations that the district would have to be able to manage if those things could be managed in order to stay and build on this site. So at the end of that 2016 study, it was decided by the board that the most advantageous plan for the school district was to build a new campus on a new site. Yes, it's going to cost more money to build a new facility on a new site. It wasn't about whether or not it could be done for the same price or whether or not it was going to be done less expensive. It was that this district needed a new school. And the delta between what a school would cost on this site and what it would cost on a new site over a 30-year bond investment was absolutely worth the 100-year investment in this community, in its students, in its program, and in the long-term viability of having a high school campus that would serve our students. So, from there, we can fast forward a little bit, not so much in timeline, but in process. The district hired C.B. Richard Ellis to scour this community and its outskirts to try to find a 30 to 40 usable acre site with which a new high school modern campus could be built. The board challenged C.B. Richard Ellis with the following criteria. If possible, could you find a site that is in close proximity to the current schools and to the current areas of the majority of district population? Number two, can you find a site that already has the utilities and infrastructure, so water, sewer, and electrical, that would service that site? Number three, Is there a site available that would not cause the district or the school board to have to take any homes or any other private property through eminent domain? And number 4, would the site possibly provide enough buffer space around its exterior so that the new high school campus would limit its impact on the nearby residents? So, after 2 years of doing that extensive study, it was determined that the best site that was available and for sale, those are 2 very important things, available and for sale, was the Three Rivers Trust property. So in 2018, the board purchased the Three Rivers Trust property for $7.5 million, and the surrounding areas around that site. There was several other parcels that were added. The purpose for adding those parcels, once again, is so that the district had appropriate right-of-ways for all the infrastructure and all of the utilities to pass through, not by having to take any private property. That was in 2019. At the end of 2018, the board engaged a company called Brain Spaces. Brain Spaces then had several community forums. They talked to students, teachers, staff, residents, all of the stakeholders. And what they did is designed what they call a pre-design plan, model, program. You might hear it called by several different names. In so doing, they said if you could build everything you would want, what would it look like? It was a comprehensive look at a wish list of items. That was in 2018. That program, that study, was then given to Thomas & Williamson in 2019, and their job was to start to say, what is realistic on the site that you bought, given this wish list? How much will it cost? What are those estimates? And frankly, what can we narrow down to make sure that you're not overbuilding, not overspending, and building the most adequate yet forward-thinking facility for our students? So that was in 2019, built on the work of Brain Spaces, and obviously Mr. Thomas is here and he can talk more about that. So the architects and engineers were brought on board, and then it was time to move forward with the project. And in 2021, obviously at that point, the district filed for what is known as a special exception for zoning, and that zoning mostly in Leet Township, and went to the Leet Township Zoning Board because the majority of the property and where the facility is going to sit is in Leet Township. Again, I will not get into all of the intricacies of zoning. I will leave that to the counselor to my left. But essentially, the zoning board did deny the application. The district chose to then seek an appeal, and the Common Pleas Court approved, and we are obviously continuing in litigation with zoning. But as the approval has been granted, zoning moves forward, and from there, we are working with architects and engineers to move this project forward and look forward to presenting to the Planning Commission very soon. So that is a little trip down memory lane and kind of where we are right now.
Thank you for that brief history. Now that you've taken the wind from my sails and answered some of the questions that we had from online earlier today, I am going to ask Mr. Phillips, if you don't mind, will you chime in a little bit on what kind of protocols would we have to follow? What kind of approvals would we need from the Army Corps of Engineers, DEP, other agencies, if we would choose to build on this site? And is it possible that we may never be able to receive those approvals? Can you speak briefly on that?
Yes, I can. As the slide that you had up there, what number? The floodplain slide, 11. Yeah, as basically the Ohio River backs up and floods the whole football stadium field and the tennis courts up towards the school. That's about 70% of the property of the 14 acres. What it is if we would build in there, we would be displacing that volume of water in that area. So the school district would have to purchase property off-site to offset that volume of water that we are displacing. That is one thing. The other is we have to go through the Army Corps of Engineers permitting process, and that's a very lengthy process with various amounts of studies that have to be done to show hydraulically how we are impacting the floodplain in the area. And that was presented to the board back in 2016 with rough timelines of what that approval process would take, as well as cost estimates for bringing in fill material or various other methods for building a school in that area. As far as the existing school site, this building was built in various stages and added on. The existing school itself is on shallow foundations, which is basically a footer. The deep foundations that was shown on the slide, which is when the school was added on with the amenities to the south of the structure. The other thing that was mentioned is the infiltration of groundwater into the lower basement and all of the rooms down there, which is a problem in the fact that there was not enough drainage put around the school structure to alleviate for that. So all of those were taken into account for the board to make a decision on this site.
We're going to shift gears a little bit here, but thank you to Mrs. Reed and Mr. Fordham who submitted those questions to us online. Dr. Riccobelli, we're going to shift over to you. You're in charge of leading the learning within your school and managing its activities, its clubs, its sports, and all of the wonderful things that Quaker Valley has to offer. What limitations do you find that the current facility introduces that we are going to be able to address through our new building?
Good evening, everyone. As Dr. Surloff mentioned and you saw in the video, the campus limitations, first of all, parking is a serious problem. We don't have enough spaces for the staff and students. So when we do try to host events, just on a daily basis it's problematic, but hosting events is extremely problematic because there's nowhere to park. More concerning is the safety issue. There is no way on this particular campus to separate our bus, car, and foot traffic in the morning and the afternoon. So we are impacting the neighbors, creating safety issues for our students. And then we also have our student drivers have to exit and enter the student lot from Route 65, which is concerning for anyone who's driven on Route 65, and the trucks and the cars go way above the speed limit, so that makes me quite nervous pretty much every day. Switching kind of to the interior issues, certainly one of the greatest concerns is our ADA accessibility. We have extreme problems getting both our students and our adults in and out of the buildings, anyone with a disability, because we're not in that sort of space. Virtually every classroom in the high school is too small. It creates a situation where we just have inadequate learning spaces, and it limits what we're able to do programmatically. This auditorium is a perfect example. It only seats 500 people. We have 600 students, so it's impossible for us to host any sort of an event with the entire building, and we can't have any of those types of things. And our classrooms, many of them only will fit about 15 or 16 students, and we would prefer to have about 25, so that also limits the access that our students have to programs. Shifting to the work we've done with the architect team, over the past few years, actually heading back to the work we did with Brain Spaces, but then sort of fast forward to the most recent work over the last couple of years with the architect team, we've brought all of these concerns to the forefront and mapped out a plan so that in a new facility, we won't have these issues. And as Dr. Surloff mentioned, we've involved all the stakeholders. We've had teachers, staff, students, families, Community members come in and work in committees and focus groups, and all of those voices have provided really valuable input in shaping what this new building would look like. And as part of that process, we've really created a design to meet the needs of our students and our community for years to come.
I thank you both for your insight on these topics. It is always appreciated when we can understand really the full scope of consideration that's gone into this project from years ago to what's currently happening right now. And that perfectly transitions us into our next section, where we're going to look a little bit more at design, project schedule, and some estimate work. They've already been introduced, but we would like to welcome Mr. Charlie Gauthier, Mr. John Orsini, Mr. John Thomas, and also Mr. Don Palmer to our panel at this time. Mr. Orsini, Dr. Surloff and Dr. Riccobelli talked a little bit about how the community, staff, and students were able to be involved in this design process and the development of the design for the new high school. Are there any portions of the original design wish list that have been included maybe in master planning for future expansion, but that we will not see happen in our first build or in this building?
Thank you very much. Yeah, there are a few items that were included in the master plan. One is a board office, and the other one that we discussed is an additional auxiliary gym. So what the project includes is on the site spaces for those particular programmed elements that could be added on in the future if needed. In addition, the board office portion of the building was designed based on academic classrooms. So in the event that the school needs to add on, there's a planned space for that as well if the district acquires more students or the population of the school grows. You're welcome.
Mr. Thomas, this is always the burning question when we meet with community groups. Can you tell us what is the current timeline for the opening of the new high school?
Sure. We're looking at a substantial completion. Substantial completion is the contractual term when a building can be used for its intended purpose. We're looking for that happening in January of 2027.
Mr. Thomas, you have been the professional to create all of the budget estimates for this project that place it between $98 million and $105 million. There have been many discussions in the community about whether or not these costs are going to skyrocket over time. Mrs. Murdoch of Aleppo asked, why can the public be confident that your current estimates are both realistic and accurate?
Sure. Let me take that question backwards for a second.
Sure.
So you hear a lot of controversy about school projects that come in way over budget, and you hear all the reasons why it happened in hindsight. There's really three reasons why a project comes in over budget. First is that you didn't properly evaluate the program, the spaces that were required for the school, the type of site construction and building construction that was going to be needed. And as a result of not properly assessing the program, you didn't associate enough money with it. In contrast, we have gone in and we've done an exhaustive review of what was required. There was more requested in the Brain Spaces study. We refocused on that during the early planning phase and removed quite a few square feet of spaces from the program to make sure that we were ensuring that we were getting the right amount of space and the right classroom spaces to run the school program. Secondly, I overcompensated for a lot of things in the development of the budget. I remember back in the zoning hearing board meetings, we talked about the types of foundations that were going to be required for the school. Well, I had budgeted the school with deep foundations. I didn't have suitable information available to me. I had some fairly reliable information from Jeff and his team, but with the absence of surefire available data, I simply said, I'm going to err on the side of being conservative. So I oversized and overpriced the foundations. Well, now that we've moved into the latter stages of design and investigation, that has paid off because now there's a windfall of additional money in the budget because we don't need deep foundations. We're able to do the project with shallow foundations. So there's a savings. So making sure that you lined up the program and making sure that you safely associated the budget. The second reason that you see these projects come in miles over budget, or the skyrocketing, as I've heard it called, is that there are these continual pressures on a project that the client tries to put more in. And it's scope creep, and the way that it happens is somebody says, hey, you couldn't go out and build an X dollar project without putting this in. So there's this tendency for the project to creep. Well, if you've done step one correctly, you've master planned what those options are, and you're able to go to the client and say, okay, you could certainly put those things in, but that's going to swell your budget above the limit. So the board, the architect, the engineers, everybody was very diligent in holding the line on what was committed to. And then thirdly, the third reason for these budget failures is lack of competitiveness. If you look at a project that comes in miles over budget, chances are you had one or two bidders, and sometimes those one or two bids that you received were not competitive at all. So how do you ensure competitiveness? First of all, no proprietary specifications. You have to open it up and let multiple companies bid on the work. Second, you have to closely equate quality and dollar value. When you're in a market like this, I'll give you an example. Aluminum windows. We've always used aluminum frame windows. We're rethinking using aluminum frame windows these days because they can't be competitive. So we're looking for alternatives. And I'm working with the design team to incorporate these cost-saving measures. And I think finally, spread the work around. Use multiple contracts and set up the bidding strategy so that more people can compete in the bidding process. So long answer to your short question, but it's really be diligent in planning, hold the line, and then don't throw it away by giving away the store with non-competitiveness.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Thomas, for that insight. And actually, that leads us into our next two panelists who we're going to address. These guys, like it or not, usually get the most questions every time we have a group around. So please join me in welcoming Mr. Scott Anteline, Director of Finance, and Mr. Jeff Waters, School Board Treasurer, to our panel at this time, and we're going to turn to you guys. Mr. Waters, you have sat on the board for a number of years. Can you talk to us about how in the early days of this project, how did the board and administration approach the development of the budget and what factors that were considered?
Yes, thanks, Michelle, and good evening. I remember that fateful day like it was yesterday, roughly 10 years ago, back in October of 2013. So when I joined the board, this was a project, as Dr. Surloff has alluded to, that was in full public swing. I entered into a multiple quarters worth of meetings where there were a bunch of property owners adjacent to the existing high school that we sit on today that were none too pleased with the administration or the board at that time. There was a clear expectation at the board level and at the administration level that that was going to be Plan A. And we moved ahead with that as the default position until we found out that that was an untenable default position. In the ensuing years, as Dr. Surloff touched on, the board's focus was on assembling a team of thought leaders, engaging the community in an iterative needs and wants assessment, and doing diligence on land options, starting here, but ultimately spreading more broadly as we learn more about the flaws in this particular parcel. With respect to the budgeting process, an early but key step in the financial diligence journey was a market benchmarking exercise to understand the cost per square foot of recent school construction projects in the region.
Now, admittedly, we had to go further afield than we would have hoped as we define the region, but in the broader, let's call it Western Pennsylvania through Ohio, we found a number of precedents that were helpful to us. These in turn served as reality checks that helped to sharpen and inform our preliminary cost modeling. By late 2017, we had enough visibility to preliminary working assumptions to understand, at least directionally, how the combined impact of the projected high school project costs and the underlying district budget would interact with the 3 state-imposed statutory guardrails that most of you are familiar with, and if you're not, be prepared to hear about these a fair amount tonight. These are 3 statutory guardrails that establish limits on public construction projects like the one we're contemplating. Act 34, the Local Government Debt Unit Act, and Act 31 are designed to prevent any school district from overbuilding, overborrowing, and overtaxing without a referendum. It was at this time that the combination of project scope uncertainty and the state of the district's underlying financial position prompted then Superintendent Dr. Heidi Ondak to signal the possibility that we might pierce one or more of these statutory ceilings, thus requiring a referendum. Of course, much has transpired over the intervening 6 years since that statement. I'll repeat, 6 years have elapsed. What has transpired, among other things, a protracted search for new land, an unanticipated change in administrative leadership, and a corresponding change of the C-suite, as it were, in the district office, a global pandemic, and more recently, an extended zoning review. While these factors all conspired to delay our high school move-in schedule, the silver lining is that this passage of time allowed us to tighten our project scope, manage down discretionary spending, lean into several strong years of revenue growth, and adroitly refinance and/or retire debt in historically favorable interest rate environments. The end result is that Quaker Valley School District is in a markedly stronger position today than it was 6 years ago. And this gives us confidence that we will execute this project while remaining under the limits established by the 3 statutory guardrails described earlier.
Thank you. Mr. Anteline, can you expand on this idea of how much the project will cost and then how it will go about being funded by the district?
Sure. Thanks, Michelle. As you mentioned earlier, Mr. Thomas answered, I mean, our project budget range is 98 to 105 million. And yes, that is elevated from when we when Mr. Thomas came on board. You know, we did do conceptual project estimates at that phase, the design phase, and including, you know, the scope of, you know, the current site. And that project range was $80 to $95 million. And obviously over that period of time, you know, with the inflationary pressures in the market that we're in, you know, that has elevated to the current 98 to 105 $1 million range. And as Mr. Orsini said, with limited scope adjustments, but you know, these folks are working together to keep that within that range of 98 to 105 million. I would note that that is just, you know, for the building project and the site. You know, as you know, when Dr. Surloff took you through the timeline, you know, we also did the extensive property search. So we did, you know, also already spend $10 million for the property purchase and for the startup costs associated with the professionals that we have to, you know, start moving through the process. So that kind of all-in budget, if you factor in that, is $115 million. You know, as Mr. Waters alluded to, you know, we have been planning for funding this and aligning to, you know, the professionals' estimates for this entire period of time. In fact, last Tuesday night, we updated, you know, we prepared and presented, and I believe it's taped and online, right? And it's online, a comprehensive financial overview of how we might fund that, you know, project. So I would, you know, recommend that anybody interested go see that. But ultimately, you know, we would be funding the project with, you know, two scenarios of a combination of cash reserves that we have in savings for that and going out and borrowing money. similar to what you would do with a home mortgage. So we're looking at potentially borrowing money over 30 years in multiple phases that align to when the project needs the money, and strategically, done so to do that. We have a team of financial partners, just like we do on the design team here, with financial advisors, underwriters, bond counsels advising us those best methods, to do that. So similar to a mortgage, that's how we would, fund that project.
I think the burning question from many of our community members is, what is the actual tax impact on our taxpayers? Can you explain that as well?
And I would say, make sure you look at that information also in the presentation. And we've been sharing that all along, kind of the outlook of where the taxes for the district are going as a whole. And thank you, Ms. Dobda, for putting up the slide already. So you'll see this in part of the presentation that really gives you a future look at where the tax rate in totality, may end up at the end of when the school opens in 2027. And it has included in their projections to fund the $115 million that we're talking about, and also the indirect operational costs associated with it, some increased staffing needs, for that project as well, and also just our general operational budget that does obviously experience increases every year. And we explain in there that our average increase typically here has been in that 1.9 to 2% range, without a high school project, and add in one of the most significant investments the district will make in the next 100 years, and a significant inflationary, economy, you will see that we're looking to projecting taxes to average 3.1% over the next 5 years, including this current year where we did raise taxes 2.9%. So it gives the community a transparent look at where that tax rate would end up. Also in the presentation, if you specifically carve out the high school project and what the millage associated with it, the presentation was aligned to the Act 34, one of the regulatory guidelines Mr. Waters talked about, and where that kind of $105 million maximum is discussed. The project financing and indirect costs is 1.43 mils associated with that 105. And obviously, as I mentioned, we already do have in place and already borrowed $10 million for the property purchase, and that was approximately 0.195 mils. So the magical number is 1.625 mils is the all-in impact of the high school project, but most importantly, this gives a look to the community as to where the entire, tax rate, may end up at the end of, when the school opens.
This may also loop Mr. Thomas back into the conversation, but what gives you as a finance team confidence that these projections are accurate, and what will the district do if actual costs come in higher than what we project?
I would share, from my perspective and the confidence I have in my role of making sure we stay in budget, because I obviously do that on the general operational side, as my peers may talk about. But ultimately, we hire, just as we did with the financing and hiring professionals and thought partners to develop plans. It is not just Mr. Thomas who explained his processes and some of the shortfalls of others, is that we also have two other firms up here today. So there's a lot of pressure testing. So the architectural firm with John Orsini and his team are concurrently looking at estimates and working with Mr. Thomas and kind of aligning that project to within budget.
One of the things that we do throughout the design process is constantly realign, constantly do test estimates and budgeting by two different firms, and then we reconcile those to see if the numbers are adequate for the building. And we did one, and we're about to go into another process of doing another estimate at what we call 50% of the documentation for the building.
That kind of pressure testing back and forth is where I gain confidence in that we're, following, what we should be doing in the diligence to ensure that we're there. And obviously, we can't predict everything, so there's no fail-proof estimate, as I think, Mr. Thomas would say. And obviously, when the bids come in, that'll be the proof in the pudding as to where we're at. But if those costs would come up, I'm confident in this team and watching them in action and developing. They're already strategically developing what alternates may look like. Mr. Thomas used an example of aluminum windows. There are multiple things because of the complexity of the market now that our team is developing to make sure that we have opportunity and choices to also, of course, when the bids come in, align to that budget scope.
Thank you very much for this insight. I'm sure that we will hear more from you guys this evening as we progress, and especially as we open this up to community questions. We're going to shift again back to some of our thought partners who are kind of our boots on the ground guys. These are part of our design team who work through schematic design, design development, site design, all of the fun things that Dr. Andreyko was able to share with us at the beginning of the evening. Mr. Orsini, you spoke about the design of the high school and how that plan has been refined over time. Can we shift our focus a little bit, though, and talk about how we've refined that design to build in some inherent safety features? What makes this particular building so safe for our students?
Yeah, thank you very much. One of the things that we do with school buildings is we look at it in regards to site and also in regards to the building. And view corridors are really important and critical for the school district to know where the students are and where the community are when they're within the building. I know that it was mentioned earlier, but the site includes both a separate parent drop-off and a separate bus drop-off so that we don't have crossing of students and buses and everything else in regards to that. The other thing that happens is these new buildings, especially on the site, are monitored through a camera system. We had the opportunity a couple of times to talk to our resource officer, Mr. Veneta, about that. We've reviewed with him camera locations, and we'll do that again to talk about the safety of the building. In regards to the building, if you think of the building like an onion, there's different layers that you have to go through. There's also different layers that people can get to. So I know Dr. Andreyko mentioned, the entry to the building. So to enter the building, you're buzzed into a vestibule. Then you're buzzed into the office. And typically a parent or a guardian or somebody not either a student or a staff member of Quaker Valley would typically stay in that office. That's why it was mentioned that there's meeting spaces and that kind of stuff there. So if you have a meeting with the principal for her to tell you how great your student's doing, you stay within that office, right? You don't go into the building proper. Also, in regards to the building's set up so that there's sort of two different sides to the building. One is assembly, which is on the south side, and that's the gymnasiums, the cafeterias, and basically the performance space or the auditorium. And the other one focuses on academics. So after school, most of the students will be down in that lower end. Once again, knowing where the students are at all times, right? That's really key. And then finally, in regards to safety, there's the cameras and there's all those layers, and you could sometimes even close off. We actually have doors that close off the academic wings. So in case something happens, those doors lock, so nobody could get to those particular wings. But then there's also the idea of the view corridors. When you're in this building, in the new building, you can see down all the corridors. You can also see the doors, whether they're in an open position or a closed position. So allowing staff and allowing other students to be able to see from one end of the corridor to the other is really critical in regards to their safety and their perception of safety, too.
Thank you. That was an excellent description of safety in the building, and I know there are a number of questions as well about safety on the site. We have heard a number of concerns about this project being similar to the Walmart site in Kilbuck Township. Mr. Phillips, can you talk about how our process is different and how we can have confidence in this process?
Yes. For all those that don't know, the Walmart site was in Kilbuck Township, and there was a major slide there that slid down onto Route 65 or Ohio River Boulevard. That site was being developed by a developer for Walmart to be there. Walmart themselves didn't develop that. In doing the development, they hired professionals to go in and do geotechnical evaluation. That site has what's called claystone, and our site has claystone on it. But their site has colluvium, which is soft soils that have eroded down, and it was 90 feet thick. And they started building a 100-foot slope above that, and that was not a proper design. Now, again, as I said, it was a private developer who was doing this work, so not all of the design was transparent to the public and to the agencies that should have caught that. Our site does have claystone on it, but we are digging everything down to bedrock. The top of the ridge has a sandstone layer that the school, as Mr. Thomas talked earlier, will be supported on rock with shallow foundations. The claystone that we are going to encounter as we develop the fill slopes that are being proposed on slide number 21 or 20. So there are some minor fill slopes right here below the high school. And this area here is where currently the previous property owner moved the Walker house. That's the old house that's up there. Then we are going to have some fill material coming off of this, and then we are using this area as a spoil area. In other words, we're going to keep all the material that we work with on site on the site. We're not trucking material away, and we're not bringing material in, other than construction materials. The rock that is underlaying here, we are going to use in the toe of these slopes, which will be founded on rock. This whole area here, all of these fill slopes we started. So if you can imagine, these fill slopes are like an iceberg. What's above grade is smaller than what's going to be below grade. An iceberg is usually about 2/3 below the water surface and 1/3 above the water surface. So we are going to be digging down to the bedrock that is underlying and building these slopes up from that. That's not what was done at the Walmart site.
Thank you. Can you also discuss, you kind of alluded to some of these things, but can you talk a little bit about the stormwater management and our plans for managing some of that runoff and how that'll impact not only our site, but the sites around us?
Can you go to slide 20? This shows the site with some of the topography that's there. Up here at this location is where there's an existing drive that has a gate at the top of the hill of Camp Meeting Road. This ridge, water that goes to the north of this ridge goes into the Little Swickley Creek watershed. Water that comes to the south of this ridge comes down to Beaver Road and is piped all the way down and eventually gets to the Little Swickley Creek near the Ohio River. What it is all this water comes down actually along the back of the stadium currently. Camp Meeting Road, there is a drainage channel that goes up along it, and then it splits off and goes on up. It is very heavily eroded. It's actually eroded some of Camp Meeting's embankment that holds the road up. It has been expressed that to us, and I've been involved in the project since 2013, and I know of 3 instances where water ended up out on 65 coming down Camp Meeting Road because there's a culvert down here at Beaver that gets blocked with sediments. So we are taking into account all of that. We are going to have what's called bioretention areas up around the school area. What those do is any runoff from the school building, any impervious such as parking lots, sidewalks, will be directed to these bioretention areas. What this does is it allows those areas to clean the water. In other words, they will take the sediments, the silt, the greases, oils, and things that come off of parking lots from vehicles that are discharged, and it will clean the water before it enters a storm system to be taken down here. And we're proposing 3 retention facilities. 2 of those retention facilities, which one will be located here, one will be located here, will control the flow of water that will leave and enter the drainage channel along Camp Meeting Road. The 3rd facility is to improve the flow problem that currently exists from all of the development that's above at Quaker Heights that all discharges down. That development was done prior to stormwater management regulations requiring that you install detention facilities. So basically, the water free falls from all of these houses, roads, driveways, comes down and is piped underneath Camp Meeting Road here and also in the Horseshoe, and comes down here uncontrolled and has eroded all of that. We are going to pick up some of this water in our analysis and retain it and slow the water down so that we minimize the amount of volume of water, the peak of the water coming here. Now it'll flow at a longer time, but it won't overflow onto Beaver Road or on the way down to 65. We are also implementing erosion control basins. What this does is it will filter any of the eroded sediments from upstream to prevent them from coming down here and clogging up this pipe. So that is what we are proposing on this side. On the Little Swickley Creek, we have tried to design this site that we have minimal development on the north side, basically just the access road and a little bit of this area, green area. We are going to be putting that into underground infiltration beds, which will allow the ground to recharge the groundwater system. And our net flow rate is a 0 going north as far as increase towards Little Swickley Creek. Also, being that we minimize, there's a cut section here and a couple of small fill slopes that are 1-to-1 right here. We are minimizing any disturbance as far as trees and the vegetation. So there's a buffer area of almost 500 feet between the tributary of Little Swickley Creek and the development that is happening here.
Thank you. Mr. Gauthier, can you talk a little bit about how Camp Meeting Road, the intersection with Beaver Street, and general traffic conditions can be improved through the district's plans? There have been concerned about increased traffic from both buses and cars transporting students.
Sure. Let's see the pointer as well. So we have here at Camp Meeting in Beaver proposed improvements. We had a 100-foot right-of-way. This is actually our property line that comes up. We have a 100-foot right-of-way right here. So when you're driving down Camp Meeting Road and you hit Beaver Street, there's a stone wall right there, kind of hard to see a little bit, so you creep out until you know you're safe to go out. We are going to take that road and shift it over within the property we own. This will be drainage underneath, so the water that Mr. Phillips was just talking about comes down and it'll go underneath. But we'll have turning lanes down there. Part of our mutual agreement with Leetsdale was to evaluate that intersection once school is open. So if any improvements need to happen there, we are willing to work with them to make those improvements. Also, when you come up, we have a lower entrance here. There will be turning lanes at this point, And the way I always envision this, if you're from Swickley or Leetsdale and you're driving to the new campus, you're not going to drive up to go to this main entrance. You're going to take the lower entrance, which is at a lower grade here. And if you're from Bell Acres, Quaker Heights, you're obviously going to take the upper. So same for our buses. They will do the same thing. Come in, have the opportunity to go out or come back down. Up top here, this is the existing entrance to the site. When you are leaving that site, the site distance isn't great. So we will be taking this curve here and actually bringing it into our site to better that site distance. We'll have turning lanes coming from the north and then turning lanes coming from the south. There will also be sidewalks coming from Beaver Street down to the lower entrance and then following around, and we'll have sidewalks coming up to this point, and we're discussing with the county of putting sidewalks up to the entrance of Quaker Heights. Currently, we have a third of our bus fleet that travels Camp Meeting Road daily. We anticipate that'll probably stay the same, but again, they have the option. I would believe they would come to the lower entrance or upper entrance again.
We have also discussed a little bit this evening the inclusion of Chief Venata and other groups in looking at camera placements and other safety features in our building. Mr. Gauthier, can you also talk about how we've discussed and included features to ensure staff and student safety, as well as looking at emergency preparedness plans?
Sure. Our safety of our students and staff is always top priority. That being said, the district is required to prepare an emergency operations plan that is reviewed by Department of Education, by PEMA, by state police, their risk and vulnerability assessment team, the county, and local first responders. That plan is reviewed annually and updated if any changes have to take place. While we've been doing this, again, we've had meetings with Officer Venata, and we've had several meetings with local first responders. I had emails from a couple of them today, setting up another meeting with Mr. Orsini to look at safety plans, but that emergency operations plan is something that is being developed, and it is not just a local, I guess, opinion. It takes all of these agencies to review the plan and approve it.
Thank you to our panelists for this opening section and for sharing your expertise. We truly appreciate you taking the time to really think through some of these questions and these difficult questions. We'll give you a moment to breathe before we open the floor to community questions. But at this time, we would like to welcome Mr. Gianni Floro and Mr. Jeff Waters, School Board Treasurer for Mr. Waters, and Gianni Floro, Chair of the Facilities Committee, to share a few thoughts related to their involvement with this project as both are senior members of our board.
Thanks, Michelle.
You're very welcome.
First, I'd like to thank all of you for coming out tonight and for your support of our community's kids. Whether you're in support of this high school project or not, you are a taxpayer and a fellow taxpayer at that who helps underwrite our collective commitment to the educational excellence that is the Quaker Valley School District. Your contribution is real and it is appreciated. As a longtime QVSD parent and old guy 10-year board member,
I said senior. I thought that was nicer.
I think it's important for those that are not as familiar with the high school project to understand that this has been an actively considered topic for at least 20 years. And Deb, you're probably right. It's probably 2x that. As such, multiple generations of administrators, elected board members, and third-party experts, literally dozens and dozens of different people from different professional, political, and demographic backgrounds have researched this topic extensively and arrived at the same near unanimous conclusion that 1, the existing high school footprint is deeply flawed, and 2, an alternative site is needed to deliver the future-facing and enduring high school solution that this community deserves. Now, with my finance chair hat on, let me make 5 points, and they'll be pretty brief, about the project. 1, this district is on historically strong financial footing and is well-positioned to take this project on. 2, this team that you see here and others in the audience is fact-based It's process-driven, and it's supported by an ecosystem of subject matter experts with deep fluency in their fields and deep experience in projects like this. And while we are bullish on this project, we are also clear-eyed about the risk factors, and we're addressing those risk factors in our project planning. 3, the board has been very public in outlining a 5-year view of measured and gradual tax increases well below state-allowed Act 1 limits. The owner of a median assessed home in this district will pay roughly $350 more per year in taxes to support this project. That's $350 more per year to support this project for a median assessed home. Number 4, it is true that we all as QVSD taxpayers contend with the double whammy of underfunded mandates and woefully little state and federal aid. The net result, we are on the hook to generate roughly 80% of our revenues locally. But it's also true that if you look at comparative millage data, you and I pay less taxes to live in Quaker Valley School District than we would if we lived in a similarly assessed property in Upper St. Clair, Mount Lebanon, Fox Chapel, just to name a few. And there are literally several more that I could name. Those appear to me, just based on their peer group status as academic cohorts, to be the most compelling comparisons. In other words, in a small district with limited economies of scale and little help from Harrisburg or DC, we are spending taxpayer dollars arguably more efficiently and more effectively than our peer districts do. This will remain the case even after the project is completed. 5, some have expressed concern that home values will plummet as a result of this project. Frankly, the exact opposite is true, according to the vast majority of local realtors, our historic experience in this community, and the national fact set. If anything, the absence of a community-worthy high school facility has been a leading and long-standing deterrent for those from outside of the community thinking about residing in Western Pennsylvania. The truth is that when communities invest in education, these communities prosper on every conceivable metric. In closing, personally and professionally as a board member, I find this to be a really exciting time for our school community. We enjoy a revitalized and evolving physical plant, one that serves as a second home for our kids and the face of the community for many. It also represents the first moment of truth for discriminating newcomers to the region. And over the next 5 years, as we complete the new high school project, we will have executed a remarkable 25-year transformation of all 4 buildings, emerging as one of the few districts in Western Pennsylvania with a truly future-proofed physical plant from K through 12. Finally, we will have facilities worthy of our kids and multiple future generations of Quakers. It's going to take a community-wide effort to make this happen. We are grateful for your interest, and we hope that you'll agree it's time to build.
Good evening, everyone. My name is John Lee Floro. I've been a school board member since 2001. I graduated from this building in 1990. I would ask that you all observe a moment of silence for my principal, Dr. Jeannie Johnson. Dr. Johnson was a wonderful soul. She led this district in the high school role here. She also served in district office. She was a great administrator, and she cared deeply about my class and this community. So I'll just ask for a moment of silence. Thank you. Over the 20-plus years I've served in this role on the school board, I've had the opportunity to be involved in the redevelopment of the 2 elementary buildings, the middle school, and now ensuring that all oars are in the same direction on this project. It has been quite an experience, and it's been quite an honor to serve my community in that role on the Facilities Committee. Before me, David Pusateri chaired this committee when we went through the very arduous task of determining whether or not this current site could serve our future needs. And if you will all recall back when we started that process under the stewardship of Ms. Harris, under the stewardship of Mr. Norris as our school board presidents during that time period, you will recall that we made an effort to see if we could live within the confines of this footprint. As you've heard this evening, we purchased 2 adjacent properties, hoping to alleviate some of the problems with the existing site conditions. And that's with regard to student drop-off, student pickup, and parking. And while you may not think that those are major issues, because they really happen 2 times during the day, in the morning and in the late afternoon. Those are enormous safety issues that this district has contended with, that the local municipality of Leetsdale has had to contend with. In fact, I had the opportunity to see Chief Rabel today to discuss some of these issues that are ongoing, because regardless, we have to live in this building for at least the next 4 or 5 years while the construction of the new building takes place. So those site challenges will continue for at least that time period. And I'm charged with seeing this building through until the completion of the new building. And I want to bring you back to 2012 when we had Worcester take a look at the site traffic. And we did a pretty comprehensive study with regard to the flow of traffic on and off of this site. And the ultimate conclusions drawn from that, that maybe we could alleviate some of that with the purchase of those 2 homes and an increase in parking and the increase ability to flow traffic, was still not a highly recommended answer to our problem. We then tasked Garvin, Bauer, and Bico with testing this site. And as Mr. Phillips told you a little bit about, we actually drilled holes on this site in the front, on the side, in the back. And you saw the slide earlier, it was slide 12, and you don't have to put it up, Karen, but one thing that I have always dealt with on Facilities Committee is the water infiltration into this building. Some of you might have had students who went to school when Dr. Longo was here, and they affectionately called part of the building Lake Longo, because there was literally, during heavy rains, a stream that went through the west part of the building, forming a pond in parts of the building. In fact, today, this building, we still have problems mitigating water and humidity. All the classrooms on the lower level in the front of the building, we have to run dehumidifiers and air conditioners. They are not the ideal educational environment for our students. We need the space though, and we have to use that space. So we're tasked with making it work until a new building comes online. In 2015, we commissioned a study to look at the facade of the building, because as you drive by, you'll see it may appear that some of the bricks are problematic, some of it looks like it's crumbling. However, through that report, we are maintaining the exterior facade of this building, we are maintaining the roof, but it's costing us a great deal of money to do that. And these are becoming greater and greater spends. At the end of the day, the end product of any redevelopment of this building would not address our goal of creating an ideal educational environment for our students. Your sons, your daughters, your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren, this building, this site won't suit those needs. You might have heard of people proposing parking garages behind the building and building a new building behind this building while students stay in this building. And I contend to you that that is not a workable solution to what we are facing. One of the things that we did as board members in addressing the challenges of this building is we had toured ongoing construction throughout Western Pennsylvania, new high schools that were built, new construction that was underway. For example, in Mount Lebanon, we had the ability to go to Mount Lebanon High School where they did do a construction adjacent to the building. However, that site did not face the same site challenges as this building, and they were able to do something like that. If you would have reviewed the report that came with slide number 12, which shows the diagram of the cross-section of the building, much of what this building is built on, especially the newer parts, and keep in mind, this is about 4 different buildings that have been built together over the years. But those site conditions are not amenable to creating a new structure on this site right behind it. And the bigger gremlin that we would have to face is where we would put our students during a construction project. We had examined using off-site trailers, either at our Bell Acres campus or even putting them on the football field. But I contend that no one in this district would want their children, their grandchildren, their great-grandchildren going to school in trailers for 4 years. It is not an acceptable result. So ultimately, the current site was determined by this board through our process of due diligence to not be an ideal candidate for redevelopment. We charged Langhold Willis Ellis in finding us a new property. That took a great deal of time and effort, and I really want to take this moment on thanking a lot of our partners here, one of which, who is seated next to me, Mr. Palmer, who is our solicitor, but his firm, Goering, Rudder & Beam, has been with the district since I've been serving on the board. And it's through their sage stewardship that we've adhered to one of our guiding principles, and that's in our due diligence process. We examine, we investigate it, we put it up against the law to see if we're doing things appropriately, and I'd like to thank him for his service and the service of our other professionals here this evening. You've heard a little bit about the process of the development of the footprint for the new high school. And that really started with our teachers and our students and the community when we put those people together to see what do we want a new high school to look like. And there was a great deal of time that was spent on that. And all of that input, our administration and our thought partners were able to put that together and hand it off to Mr. Thomas, our program manager, who told us what are the size of those spaces going to look like. And that is an important part of our due diligence process because it helped us right size the building. You've heard when we first acquired the building, we had our civil engineers tell us how much space we could use out of that site. We first were told we could get down and get a 60-acre site. But that would have really had a big impact up on the hill. It would have had a great ground disturbance. We were able to narrow that down based upon what we learned from our partners with regard to the program that we need to deliver to our students, and we were able to right-size it. And that's where you see the present plans right now. It fits into the natural grade of that site quite well. And that was one of the challenges that we wanted to address. I've also heard some talk of why didn't we go further down the hill? Why didn't we develop on the other side of the hill? As you heard from Mr. Phillips tonight, the northern part of the site is a wetland. So that was the last thing we wanted to touch. Again, we would get into permitting issues that we weren't going to be required to get into if we kept a nice, tight, right-sized project. And then I essentially drew a line in the sand and said, we are not going any lower than this. Because one of the most important things that you will know with regard to protecting the environment is if we don't disturb something, it'll be just fine. So that's why you don't see much disturbance to the south, because we have a wonderful, vibrant neighborhood just below where the proposed site is. So taking all that into account, I want to also thank Mr. Anteline, Mr. Waters for their work on this, because we were able to come up with a finance scheme that really works. And it's not something that happened overnight. I want to go back to one of my former colleagues on the board, Mr. Tom Patton, who had the opportunity to work with, who really got us very disciplined with regard to the structure of our debt, planning for this day here, where we're going to build a new high school. That's why we're able to keep it within the confines of Act 1, because through our stewardship of your finances, of which I pay, of which Mr. Waters pays in the form of taxes, this can happen with a minimal impact to the taxpayers. It's going to cost money, but in order to get a building that will serve this district for the next 100 years, we're going to have to pony up and do it the right way. Thank you.
I would be remiss if I didn't take a moment to thank not only Mr. Waters and Mr. Floro for their service on the board, but also our other board members who are with us this evening. We have Mrs. Katie Dobler, Mr. Jeff Barnes, obviously Mr. Jonathan Kuzma. We have Mrs. Daniela Halkowski, Mrs. Chesney Soderstrom, and Mrs. Marna Blackmer, who are all with us in the audience today. Thank you for your service. Oh, and Stratton, you're all the way on the end. Stratton was hiding from me. He's on the end, and Mr. Stratton Nash. Thank you to all of you for your service on the board. As a reminder, our school board are made of volunteers. They are not paid for their service, and in addition to our currently serving school board members, we have many past board members as well as some board candidates, and we thank all of you for your willingness to serve your community and the students here at Quaker Valley. At this time, we're going to begin to open the floor to public questions. We do ask, and to reiterate the comments of earlier this evening, that we keep questions both respectful and productive. Give me a moment as we transition. Mrs. Stephanie McKissick, Director of Human Resources, and Dr. Susan Gentile, who is our Director of Instruction and Learning, as well as Mr. Mike Lewis, who's Director of Student Services, will be around to help us with this public question portion of our evening. Some of you may have also written your question on a card to have someone share. If that's the case, feel free to just kind of throw that up in the air and we'll get someone around to grab it. As we start to get situated and you guys start to indicate questions that you may have for our panelists, I'll throw them a couple of softballs. So you guys can start to let our assistants, our lovely directors, but assistants today, let them know that you guys have a question. They'll make their way to you. And I'm going to pose this question, which was sent to us from Mr. Vecchio of Swickley Borough. What are the prospects of adding turf fields to our new site versus adding grass fields? Is that something that we can expect to happen? Perfect, Mr. Goche, take that one.
At this time, we cannot. So again, we talked a little bit about Act 34. There is that limit, that threshold of what the district can spend. So even if someone came with a donation of 5 million, 10 million, said, I want you to build this, we cannot do it. Act 34 limits you of what you can spend. So if we're planning to spend 105 million and somebody comes in and says, here's 20 million, I want you to build this, we can't do it. We are capped at that level.
Perfect, thank you. Do we have some audience questions? Oh, go ahead.
That's until the occupancy permit is issued, is that correct?
Correct.
So any future generosities will certainly be not turned away.
Yes, that is during the development phase.
Yes, as we approach you for public question, if you could give us your name and your municipality, we would be very appreciative of that.
Are we good? Good evening. My name's Leland Floyd. I'm a Sewickley Borough resident for the last 40 years. Both my daughters K to 12 here. Get my glasses out here. Your proposed high school site fails all site parameters, including safe access off the treacherous Camp Meeting Road, excess construction costs over a new building on this current site, questionable zoning still under litigation, and of course the red bed geology that is very prone to landslide. However, my question just deals with one failure, and that is the environmental damage you will create at your proposed site, which I remind you and the community is still not a done deal. Will you please confirm or correct the following environmental facts about the Hilltop site? And I'll give you a copy of this so you can reply. It'll take you some time maybe. Number one, 20 to 30 acres of forest hilltop will be clear cut. Number two, 30 feet of elevation will be removed, including blasting of sandstone to create a level high school site. Number three, multiple natural springs will be disturbed, impacting watershed of Little Sewickley Creek. Number four, wildlife habitats will be destroyed. Number five, additional vehicle emissions will be created due to the extensive site preparation work. Number six, students will be bused further, adding to additional bus emissions. And lastly, number seven, the Hilltop High School cannot be LEED certified due to the site selection and its large environmental impact. Now, none of these severe environmental damages are necessarily going to happen if you use this current site.
Answer that question? Did you catch the question in there, Mr. Phillips?
Yes, I don't remember all of the questions that were listed. But as far as the 20 to 30 feet of hilltop removal, that was the original design during due diligence. The current design, we are only limiting, and that's because the building actually, due to height, it steps down, that we're removing 15 to 20 feet right at the building. The rest of the site, we are averaging somewhere around 10 to 15 feet. You're saying excessive construction costs over the new building on the current hill site. I'm not sure how you're coming up with that, because that would have to have a defined scope of work of what you're proposing on this site versus what is being proposed at the, up on the new site.
Natural springs being.
As far as the natural springs, we are not impacting natural springs that are on the north side of the slope. That's what I had indicated, that we are on the Little Swickley Creek side of the property. Because of the bedrock that is there, the surface water that hits the ridge for the top 10 to 15 feet comes out at that elevation. We are going to be founding the building on rock, and we are going to keep the amount of water that was infiltrating into the ground on the north side of the slope. It will continue to go to the north side of the slope.
I'll talk about clearing. Yes, the original plan when we were going through the design process, we were affecting 65 acres, I believe, was being cleared. And then, again, through this design process, we have refined that scope of work. We are affecting 44 acres. 17 of that is already open. So yes, there will be 27 acres or so that will be affected by this. But we also have an additional 7 acres outside of this area of disturbance that we are planning to reforest as well.
Plus the the proposed site has an extensive landscaping where within the parking lots we have islands with trees which will create canopy. We have peripheral landscape trees that go around the parking lots as well as all of the roadways. So we are proposing to improve the condition up there by adding green space. Now we are changing the topography, but we are still adding more vegetation back into this project as we can.
Yeah, that is with our landscape architect. That is planning for native vegetation, grasses, trees that are going back in these areas that are being affected.
Thank you. As we prepare for additional questions, I'll throw another one to you that we received online. Mr. Rothbauer of Swickley Borough asked, has the cost of maintaining the existing high school building been included in the future operating budget when the new high school opens? Sure. Has the cost of maintaining the existing high school building been included in the future operating budget when the new high school opens? So I think if I rephrase it, is it in the financial plan?
It is to an
Okay.
extent. The extent is we're obviously going to be still using the site for the athletic complex and the parking lots and the roadways there. You know, this current site here, it does not have a plan, you know, to be used in its current capacity, and that has not been developed. We do have a minor contingency in there to keep the upkeep of the building as far as minor utilities and stuff for that. But until that master planning is complete in next phases, you know, there's nothing that's going to be fully operational.
Thank you. Do we have questions from the audience?
How you doing? I'm Brian Gibson. I reside in Lee Township, and I have 2 questions for you. First question is, what are your plans for the existing facility here in the property after the new facility is built? And the other one is, I heard some discussion about Camp Meeting Road, and not quite clear if there's, I guess there's future lanes, possibly redesign. Will any of those costs be included in your budget for the school, or is that in addition to? That's all I have for you. Thank you.
Answer your second question first, and then I'd like to take a crack at your first question.
Yeah, so the improvements to Camp Meeting Road, again, will be the intersection of Camp Meeting and Beaver. So that road will be realigned to give you a better sight distance. Again, we always talk about that stone wall when you're coming down Camp Meeting Road. That road will be shifted over with the turning lane, again, to give you that better sight distance there. There will be turning lanes onto from Camp Meeting Road to the lower entrance, and then the upper entrance, that curve up there will be realigned to give you a better sight distance, and there will be turning lanes again coming from north and south into the campus. But that is all part of the current budget, the estimated budget.
I wanted to make sure you caught that second part, so thank you. Mr. Flora.
With regard to your first question, sir, the board has made no decisions relative to the present site. We have not been, just so it's clear to the community, because there has been some rumors out there that have been circulated. No one has contacted us that we consider a serious developer or things of that nature in order to purchase this site or use this site for any other services whatsoever. In fact, this site, the district considers it to be a valuable site. And since site is limited in this district, we may maintain this site. We have a thriving co-curricular space behind this building with fields, things of that nature. I'm a school board member. If I had my druthers, we'd demolish this portion of the building, including the classroom space, and we would put in some different amenities that the district could use, maintaining the old gymnasium like they did in Ambridge, but that's just my opinion. Our swim program in this area is lacking pool space. There's other co-curricular activities that are lacking ice space. So I'm just an individual school board member. That's just my thought on it. But again, that's something better for future boards, but the present plan is not to touch this site.
Okay. Do we have additional questions from the audience? Oh, it looks like in the back or over here in the front corner. If we want to jump there, we'll come across the aisle.
Thank you. My name is Bud Smith. I've lived here for 40 years and currently reside in Aleppo Township. Something was raised here which raised an issue with me. Am I right that you're going to leave all the athletic fields down here and not build them up there? Is that what I'm hearing?
Correct.
So isn't there a safety issue there of having students down here sometime and students up there sometimes? And are you ever going to move the athletic facility up to the hill? Tell me what you're doing in that regard.
So that's a very good question. So
Yes,
as you
it is.
saw on the site plan, Karen, let's go to slide number 21.
Yeah, that was the slide that I noticed this on.
Yes.
Thank you.
So as you can see, what is labeled to the left as lawn is actually a practice field, but when the site was designed and purchased, the board wanted to ensure that whatever future campus we had all future amenities as options for future boards. So when the school building opens, which is the most important facility, obviously, is having the school, that will be a practice field, but the space that is there and all of the utilities and amenities that are there would give a future board an option if they desired to add a sports facility, it could be added there. But when the school building opens, the plan is for the stadium to remain on this site, very similar to the Shaler Area School District that has their stadium at a different site, and the Thomas Jefferson School District that just built a new, West Jefferson Hills actually, Thomas Jefferson High School. Their stadium is on another site.
And I would also like to add this plug for the Quaker Valley Recreation Association, who presently maintains our fields at the Bell Acres campus, which includes our WPIL baseball field, our WPIL softball field, and they're presently developing a performance turf soccer field at that campus, as well as other field space. So they're in the process of conducting a fundraising effort to continue that development to completion. So that is my shameless plug for the Quaker Valley Recreation Association. They've gotten a state grant for $500,000, which is a matching grant They've been able to raise over $400,000 to date, and their fundraising effort is back in full swing. So if you have the ability to help out the Recreation Association, which includes Quaker Valley Softball and Baseball, our Lacrosse Association, and our soccer folks, please continue to help that effort.
Is that essentially you're going to have two campuses. You're going to have students coming down to play sports. There'll be showers. There'll be athletic offices down here. And there'll be another school up there. How do you plan to keep control of your students and safety when you have effectively two campuses?
So they go to away events, and coaches and sponsors and the folks who supervise them will continue to supervise them, just like we do when we go to away events, just like we do when we go to the baseball field, as was mentioned on the Bell Acres campus, just like we do when we go on field trips, when we take them overnight to Washington, D.C. So we have a long history of supervising students safely when we travel.
A degradation of the education process by doing the split that you're doing.
Worse. Just
Pardon me?
after.
All after school hours. We have a gymnasium, the practice fields, the areas outside. That's where the students will be for athletics during the school day.
Yeah, physical education classes and whatnot will have the tennis courts and the field space and even some lawn area on the other side of the building. All of that during the school day would stay on campus.
You ever plan to bring the athletic field up to the new site?
Yeah, that's
And is
what
that,
we share.
is that in your budget?
That's not in the $105 million. It is not in the scope of this
So we
project.
look forward to that additional cost down the road.
If future boards in this community decide that that's what they want, then they have that option because the board picked the site that would give as many options for future flexibility as they could.
Okay.
Your original question, Mr. Smith. Which is a fair question.
Yes, it is.
We have security systems in place that monitor the field space, and those security systems aren't going anywhere.
All right.
And we have a very good relationship with the local police authorities as well as our own police department here in the Quaker Valley School District that puts safety as priority number one.
I would just ask you to think about what you have just said. On the one hand, you said you've done a tremendous job of figuring the cost of this, not having scope creep, et cetera, et cetera. Now you're saying down the road, there's going to be a major expenditure we don't know about yet to move the athletic facility up to the hill. Have I missed something here?
Yes.
So it's not going to cost us anything in the future, is that right?
If we can tie up this, so we have other folks for other questions. As we've shared, this facility for our students, for our staff, is the most important project that we have in front of us right now. And that is the most important endeavor this district has looked forward to. There are always future decisions to be made as we progress, but this is the decision that needs to be made for our youngsters at this time. If I can see hands again for questions, I apologize. I know that there are several other hands.
I've got
that were
some down here in the front left. We've got a couple in the back.
Hi, Andrew Badacki, Leedsdale, PA. As a student that actually graduated from Quaker Valley in 2002 and lived through a lot of these things, a need for a new school is very important, and I do recognize that. My current residence is on Sycamore Spur, right, literally on the southern slope of this. And my question, I believe, will be going to Mr. Phillips, is that what is the approximate drop in elevation between the extreme eastern side of that site on the southern access road between the retention ponds for wastewater runoff?
When you're saying wastewater runoff?
Rainwater.
Rainwater.
Groundwater.
What elevation?
The reason I'm asking that is it seems like it's an awfully long way to have water be drained on the extreme western part of the property as opposed to coming up with a way to mitigate it down the steeper part of the slope on the southern side. With the addition of that access road to the plans, that is going to give the ability for additional runoff. So my concern is more so for the property below that area.
Well, we're collecting all of the water that's on the top of the ridge with this development and taking it over to the proposed stormwater facilities.
And that's
So
why my
that's-
question was,
so that-
what is the difference between the elevation of that extreme right side, or excuse me, extreme eastern side of the property, where the school building itself is being built?
Proposed.
To the, proposed, excuse me, to the extreme western site where the wastewater runoff, or the groundwater runoff
So the
retention
elevation,
area is.
the elevation at the school, the one level's at 1094, and the lower level of the school building where the gymnasium, auditorium, which is on the south side of the ridge, which is towards the residents below, is 14 feet lower. So from that elevation, we are coming down to the pond, the proposed retention facilities, and they're around 900. So you have almost 200 feet of elevation that it will travel.
And my last question is, what kind of securities are being granted for the residents in those areas where the wastewater runoff has already been an issue from the previous development that had been up at the top of the hill?
Well, we're collecting all of the storm runoff that was along the ridge and now taking it over towards Camp Meeting Road, so that means there's less water coming down the slopes, which is above you.
Well, currently, under the district's guidance, we have issues with runoff now. What's being done to resolve that? That is my question. And to make sure that going forward with this plan, that it's done so in a manner that is responsible to not only the students and staff and those that, and myself included in this, that want to see a new high school, but also to ensure the property of the residents below the site.
What Mr. Phillips just said was that we are going to be retaining the water as it comes down the hill and releasing it at a lower rate in a more responsible fashion. If you will think back to what happens on 65 during a heavy rain, we actually work with Leetsdale to help maintain their drainage system that runs through, I believe it's the park in Leetsdale that comes down off of that way. We're presently helping Leetsdale with that, but that's not a problem that we created up on the site. We're actually going to improve. We're going to improve what Mr. Phillips was just telling you is we're going to improve that water flow coming down so that it'll be better for Leetsdale and it'll be not affecting the residents in your area.
Well, what type of security are you going to present for that?
Well,
Like,
that's-
can we
that's-
be
that's
named
in his
as
design bill.
insured? Can we, as residents, be named as full health insured against that? Because I do know that Representative Gatos was also presenting at 6 o'clock this evening about landslide insurance. Now, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I just want to make sure that somewhere down the line in the next 5, 10, 15 years, that our property is protected from this construction. That's all. I'm not even opposing the school district's proposed site.
Well,
I just want to make sure that our houses are safe.
Well, to answer your question, the protection is in that Leeds Township has engineers that review everything. There are other governmental agencies that are going to be reviewing this. The Department of Environmental Protection will be reviewing this. The Allegheny County Conservation District will be reviewing this. So there are multiple governmental agencies out there that will be reviewing the design of this site and that it is being met with all the legal rights that are out there. To say exactly what a guarantee is, we can't guarantee anything.
Well, insurance is not a guarantee. Insurance is a protection. And that's what I'm asking about, is will we be able to be named as lined insured against this construction? God forbid something happens.
I don't know
We're
of any
going to have
insurance
Mr.
company.
Palmer, our solicitor, answer that question.
I appreciate your reference to Representative Gatos, and we're watching that as well. At present, there is not insurance that would be available to cover that. As Mr. Phillips noted, the protection is in the design and the review of that design by the appropriate township officials.
Well, and Mr. Phillips brought up Lee Township engineers. I live in Leetsdale. Have the Leetsdale engineers reviewed these components?
Leetsdale Borough, and their engineer will also be reviewing everything.
Okay, but that hasn't been done. Okay, thank you.
No,
Thank
we
you
have
for
not submitted anything for review at this time. We've had a preliminary application meeting with both municipalities to give them an idea of what is being proposed and to determine the procedures at which they would like to have us submit.
Can I add to that as well? With that discussion, our full construction document did not need to go to Leetsdale Engineer, but our discussion with them is, listen, we know this is going to be in the community. We want you to review our entire set of plans, not just that road improvement that's taking place at Beaver and Camp Meeting. So their engineer will receive our entire set of construction documents to review.
I appreciate your time. While I don't agree with the sentiment of your last statement, I do appreciate you hearing my questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Share. I had the opportunity to see Representative Gatos a couple weeks ago and shared that we had a date that was similar, and she has shared that she's looking at alternative dates to have another meeting since we were coinciding on the same night.
Dr. Gentile, did we have a question down here in the front, I think? Oh, 2, 3, 4. We've got
Hi,
lots.
Amy Zuba, Edgeworth. So right now, a student with mobility issues and disabilities and injuries cannot easily navigate this building and this campus. Indoors, outdoors, the hill is treacherous. It's great for sled riding. It's treacherous for everything else. So what research has the design team done to assure we parents of kids with disabilities and assure us that kids with all physical abilities are going to be able to be included and use the property and have access to the whole property easily?
Mr. Orsini, would you like to chime in on that?
Yeah, I'll do it on the building. In regards to the building, unlike this building right here, where we have multiple steps, multiple layers, especially when you get down near the gymnasium, this building is all level on all the floors. In regards to accessibility, from floor to floor, there's elevators that connect to the upper academic floor as well as to the lower floor where the assembly spaces are. In regards to restrooms, there's certain diameters and other things that are required for an accessible restroom based on applicable codes. So all of that stuff is very relevant and built into the design of the new school. So I like to say that it's for every kid, right? Every kid has an opportunity to go to the music room, which right now I don't know how kids get there. But every kid has an opportunity to get to every space and to participate in everything, even in regards to things like locker rooms and some of the other collaborative spaces that we have in the new school that this current building does not have.
As far as the site, in order to get to the building, the sidewalks and the parking area, we have a substantial amount of handicap area that will be able to get into the building at both levels, as well as over where the tennis courts are. It is at one level there. So there's no steps that they have to go up or very steep inclines that would have to be traversed. They will be able to access all of that. In other words, a student at the school, if they had to go out to the tennis courts, would have sidewalks that are sufficient for them to travel that way.
As we mentioned, our teachers were an important part, and our students, of those focus groups. And since they're currently the ones that are managing a lot of those issues, they were very intentional when working with the architects about it was really important that we have that accessibility and inclusivity, because right now that's a real problem for us, getting students with disabilities and adults when we have events in and out of our spaces.
Additional questions? Oh, we got one in the back.
Napolitano. Dominic Napolitano. I live in Leedsdale. And I'm following up on Mr. Budaki's question concerning the neighborhood right below the school, the Larkin Fields neighborhood. So you mentioned before the elevation, you had 14-foot difference across the length of the site to take water away. That isn't very much, so I'm a little concerned in terms of the water flow out there. What's the design basis to actually move the water through there? What kind of storm are we talking about? I want to understand the net flow impact down the hill to the neighborhood under different conditions, extreme conditions, as well as regular design-based conditions.
Well, the 14-foot difference is the difference between the upper part of the school where you walk into at that level, and then the, as John mentioned, the athletic, the basketball courts, as well as the auditorium. That is at a 14-foot difference in grade. As far as the difference in grade from the school down to the retention facilities, we're over 150 feet in elevation.
But remember, that has to travel the length, the 14-foot, the length first down 14 feet. That's where the holdup will be in the water. So I'm curious the design basis. You designed it for a storm. What kind of storm you designed it for? And what's the net flow impact down the hill?
The whole site will be designed up to the 100-year storm.
100-year storm.
Yeah, to collect all the water for that.
And so what's the net flow impact down the hill with a 100-year storm?
That actually be negative.
Negative.
Yes, because we are going to be taking the water that was coming down on the ridge, that where we're developing is all going to go over towards Camp Meeting Road and be in a retention facility.
Great, thank you.
Mrs. Gentile, we have a question right up in the second row at the first seat. Mr. Michaels?
Hi, I'm Tom Michael. I've been living in Leedsdale as the neighbor to the Walker estate for the last in fact, I think this Friday makes 43 years. Yeah, okay. Just to clarify this gentleman's question about the high school athletic fields, they were initially part of the proposal to the Lee Township Zoning Board. But it was determined by the zoning board that the school could ask only for the school and not the board building or the athletic fields on this application. So there was no consideration given to the inclusion of an athletic field or the board building with the current petition for the conditional use. The zoning board did say that if the school district wanted to apply in the future to have school athletic fields and the board building up there, they would have to make a separate application. That's just a clarifying statement because it was part of the zoning board's rulings during the proceedings this past year. I have a question for the engineer. If we could throw the slide up there that has the elevations on it, because I want to refer them to it.
20.
I don't know the number. No, I think it's the next one, but well, either one is fine. Mr. Phillips, there you go, that's fine. Mr. Phillips has indicated that all of the water is going to be channeled to the west for the retention ponds that are going to be built. Now, first question is, who is going to maintain the retention ponds? Because one of the problems with that current pipe that comes down the hill is that it's covered by the opening, the uphill opening to that pipe is covered by a screen. And that screen gets covered over, and the water, instead of going into the pipe, goes around the pipe and comes rushing down Camp Horn Road. It's basically a lack of maintenance. I don't know if the school district is responsible for that, or if it's Leet Township or Leetsdale, but it doesn't get done all the time. And as a result, it's worn away. Part of the shoulder and land adjacent to Camp Meeting Road. Now, I don't see anything on your schematic that indicates water is going to go to the west. I see the contours where it comes down and decreases in elevation, but I don't see anything that takes from the right-hand side of the site, the eastern side, to the western side of the site. I mean, how do you, looking at that, how do you say that the water that comes down off the top is going to go and stay on your site until it gets way over to the west? That's
Phillips, can you first address the roadway water conveyance and whether that comes from the surface or if it's an underground pipe coming from Quaker Heights?
No, it's not a pipe from Quaker Heights. It is not.
The water that you're talking about along Camp Meeting Road,
Right.
and that comes down through there. The proposed facilities that we are proposing, the retention facilities, will be maintained by the school district. Based on, by regulation, the NPDES permit that we are granted, part of that permit requires us to put together a maintenance schedule, and there's also a maintenance agreement that will be with Leet Township, that if the school district fails to maintain those, they will have the right to go in and maintain them and charge the school district.
If you have a serious rain event before that gets done, what are you going to do to remediate the people that water hits if it starts coming out, because it can't go down the drains, they're plugged, it's got to spill out of the sink somewhere?
Well, part of that program is that after every storm event, these facilities are checked.
They're supposed to be checked.
That's correct.
Okay.
And if they're not, then the next layer is Leet Township, and if not, then it's DEP that will come in.
And who's going to pay for damages?
Well,
this
that's
plugs
more
up?
of a legal question. I'll defer to Mr. Palmer on that.
Before we go to Mr. Palmer.
As far as your other question about how is the water going to get from where the school is being proposed over to the west, what's not shown on this drawing, because this is still preliminary schematic design, it's not finalized, but we have a pipe system that goes along the lower road, as well as swales that are below the slopes, all the proposed slopes. There's a swale that will collect any runoff from that and take it over to the west.
Has this design been approved by the Leet Township engineer?
No, because we have not made any application submittal for preliminary final approval yet.
Has it been approved by the Leetsdale engineer?
It has not been submitted to them for approval. We are going to be submitting in October.
If you participated in the zoning hearing for Leet Township, did you not?
Yes, I did.
And do you recall, it was either you or your colleague, being asked the question, you're going to blast on that site, aren't you? And you said yes. They're going to have to blast.
Yeah, it was said at that time because we did not know the hardness of the rock.
And you were under oath. You were sworn in and testified to that.
Okay, we're going to move on to.
Why don't you let me
people
ask
who
my...
have other questions? Well, you've asked now 6 questions, sir, and we're going to go on to the next resident who may have a question.
Get to the last one, Mr. Floro. Last question is, can you tell us what the effect on blasting will be on underground surface water? Not surface water, underground water.
It depends on the circumstances. And I'm not an expert in blasting. We would have a consult. We'd have a contractor who does that work, who has done extensive studies.
Do you recall the answer that was given to the zoning board?
I don't recollect it right now, sir.
Okay. The answer was they don't know.
Okay, we're going to move on to the next question if a resident has a question.
My name is Bill Jasper. I'm running for the school board, and I have some issues with this, and I'm glad you have it up.
Ask a question. This is
yes,
not.
Yes,
this is not,
I have a question. I have a question.
And ask questions, sir.
I have a question. I have a question. You've got 25 homeowners down here. It relates directly to Tom's question, how you're going to safeguard, because you've got risk mitigation over here, but you don't have any risk mitigation above the 25 homes that are down here. The water that was discussed before is coming down here and causing a problem. It is not being maintained now. So my question to you is, this site is a mile further from the hospital. It's a mile further from Swickley and from Edgeworth first responders. It's 3/4 of a mile further away from Leetsdale first responders and the ones in Lee Township. So that's going to add time to any response. And this site is located way over here on the toe, just about as far away as you can get from Camp Meeting Road. So my question to you is, how are you going to explain to the parents, how are you going to explain to your friends and relatives, the people that have a heart attack here, any kind of other emergency situation, that it's going to take longer for first responders to get here and care for somebody who's in desperate need?
Thank
You're
you
going
for
to
your
have
question,
choke
Mr.
points.
Jasper. What
right,
we're going to tell them
you're going to have
is
choke
that we
points
have a certified
here and
nurse
here and
in
here
our high school
and
building
here that
who can
first
perform
responders are going to have to
CPR.
deal with.
We also have a very brisk coaching staff that is trained in CPR, and there will be first responders in the building in the form of a police force. So rather than scare the public and scare the, instead of, can I answer your question, sir? Instead of scaring the public, we are reducing, under this schematic plan, we're reducing the amount of traffic that's actually going to go up the main part of Camp Meeting, because people will coming up the hill will take the lower entrance and enter the site. People coming from the top of the site will enter the top portion of the entrance and enter the site.
Additional school buses.
This is not a debate. This is not a debate, Mr. Jasper. That's October 2nd, when you can see me up here on stage.
That's my question.
Earlier, we are required by law to develop that emergency operation plan, which includes Department of Education, PEMA, state police, local, and county. All of those are being planned. Again, buses, I don't see any additional buses. Again, we have 1/3 of our fleet coming up and down Camp Meeting Road right now, so I don't see. No, we won't.
Okay, we'd like to move on to additional questions.
We have a
Ms.
question
McKissick.
in the back.
Mr. Holton's been waiting, excuse
Yes.
me, Mr. Floro. Mr. Holton's been waiting, and then we'll get the question in the back.
Thank you.
John Holton, Sewickley. The impacts of climate change are more and more important. Our high school will be serving in this world for the next 100 years. A school building that is energy self-sufficient would be a real community asset under these conditions. I know you have tried to incorporate some of the provisions of the zero energy design into the project. What is the state of these efforts now?
Possibility for the building and materials.
Sustainability study in regards to the new building that provided direction for net zero energy. The site would include solar arrays as well as other entities that saves energy in regards to that.
Oh, okay. There's one kind of back here to the left if we want to catch that next. Thank you. He has. Thank you for your patience. Go ahead.
Okay, my name is Gwen Clements, and I do live in Lee Township, right up above Quaker Heights. My concern, and I know you've done a lot of research over the years and everything, and this is such a simple one, but as a senior citizen, drive down Camp Meeting Road, my concern is concerning the safety of children, individuals who walk the hill before and after hours, also for cars coming out of the school entrance onto Camp Meeting Road. You'll have new drivers coming out, you know, and young people, oh, I can meet this. And each time I come down that hill, that curve, and I notice they've put a flashing light, you know, to slow down or whatever. I'm just really concerned, and I pray to God that I'm off the hill before all this takes place, because I would not be able to live with myself if I hurt somebody. And after hours, as you see that it's starting to get dark sooner, after hours activities when kids are, they've missed a bus or whatever, I just think that just really, really frightens me. My other concern, and this was based on one of my neighbors, she said, what are the plans for emergency vehicles? And we're surprised that Encompass really hasn't said too much. You know, whenever an ambulance has to get up or down, we lived through the county making repairs to our road. And if you can remember the traffic, the gridlock for hours, and that's going to be so much more intensified with traffic coming out for school. Those are my concerns.
Do we want to start with pedestrian safety along the hill and then kind of work from there?
I'll just say again, we are providing sidewalks, which we currently don't have along Camp Meeting. So you'll have sidewalks coming from Beaver up to the lower entrance. We don't have that slide up, but sidewalks will be provided there. We are having discussions with the county for that upper entrance of bringing sidewalk possibly over to Quaker Heights as well.
You ask a very important question about student driver safety and about safety in general. And as I said before, spending 10 years in this building, we had a lot of safety scares here because right now, when students would try to exit at the same time buses were exiting onto Beaver Street, the sight lines were very bad going left and right, especially when people park along Beaver Street. The biggest fear, actually, as Dr. Riccobelli shared, is in the morning, having to slow down from 50 miles an hour to make a right-hand 90-degree turn into the field onto Route 65. And then after school, when the students exit that direction, having to make that same right-hand turn onto Route 65, being cognizant of the fact that the traffic coming from the left is going at that speed, and then making that safe right-hand turn, especially when students are coming in at the bottom of the stadium and somebody's also right there trying to go out at the same time and having to slow down to make that turn. So this site, quite frankly, is far more scary to me right now than having two entrances where the students won't even actually have to use that curve and go to the top and go up and go to the bottom and go down. The other thing about emergency vehicles is having to live on this site for a long time. is, as you know, when emergency vehicles come here, they are going north on 65. The only way to get into the site is to make that same right-hand turn and come up the hill and hope that they can make the left-hand turn at the top of the hill to come safely around. The bus loop that comes around makes it very difficult for a ladder truck to ever get behind this building if they ever had to reach the back of this building. And we had a couple different, frankly, bomb scares and things when emergency vehicles had to get here and traverse this site, and it was quite a challenge. So I think your concerns are very real, and I believe it's something that they put a lot of thought into when they said that we would actually bring Camp Meeting Road onto our site, improve the site distance going left and right, and adding turning lanes at the entrance and exit points. So I do think traffic safety is a very significant concern.
Thank you. No, just kidding. Do we have any questions on this side? I know we had some hands at one point, but we didn't make it over here. Oh, we've got one right back there, and then we'll come back over.
Good evening. First, I'd like to thank the school board for their efforts on this project. It's a voluntary position and often not appreciated, so thank you. Just further to Mr. Smith's question about the dual campuses, how do you propose to get students back and forth on a daily basis to practice, to games, for the band, football, whoever uses the facility at this campus? Is it bus? Is it walking? Is it, you said it's supervised, but you didn't say what the mode of transportation would be.
Mostly when it's a full team that would be going, it would be bus transportation. So at the end of the day, they would take a bus down the hill. In some cases, depending on the size of our teams, depending on the sport, sometimes they could ride along with another bus that was already kind of coming this direction. It wouldn't necessarily require a separate shuttle. Something larger like the band, they might keep their equipment down on this site if this is where they're going to practice. They would use their band trailer if the practice, so there is green space on the new site. We hope band can actually practice on that site and then only use the same band trailer they use for away games to come down on Friday night. So that would be the most common mode of transportation.
Thank you.
Coming this evening, I'm going to give you.
Sir, if you have a question, we are happy to answer them. We have answered numerous questions throughout the evening today.
We will answer it.
All right, at this point, it seems that we are moving to a place that is not productive, and Mr. Flora would like to close us out with some parting thoughts as we get ready to.
I would like to first thank you all for coming this evening. On behalf of the school board, I want to express our gratitude to our panel members, our audience, and the broader public for their active participation in tonight's panel discussion. An additional thank you must go out to our project professionals, Mr. Thomas, Mr. Phillips, Mr. Orsini, Dr. Palmer. You know, lawyers are Juris Doctorate, but we never call lawyers doctors, but you're a doctor in my book. Our whole Quaker Valley team for their thoughtful work in reviewing the needs of the high school to prepare the project to go to bid. There's a lot of you out in the community, I know, with coming up families who really want to know, hey, why hasn't this project been built yet? You have to trust our process in order for a really good product to come out of it. We pay people good money, your money, to come up with the solutions for the problems for this district. We have to trust their work. We have some of the brightest people working on the development of this project. My fellow board members are taxpayers too. The future of this district matters to us in our community, and we're dedicated to creating a state-of-the-art facility that our families and students deserve. Your attendance here tonight has enriched our conversations, and hopefully we have the ability to, shed a little light on everyone's perspectives. But this is an important once-in-a-lifetime project. We look forward to continuing the conversation, to sharing what we've learned throughout this process. We're going to continue to be transparent with regard to what we've learned and the direction of where we're going. So I'd like to thank you all again for your input and your patience throughout the development process. We will build this new high school for the generation awaiting it and the many more to come. Thank you all for your attendance and participation this evening.
If I can share one last thing, please keep in mind we have a Blueprint QV website rich with much information. It also has a Dropbox for additional questions that we answer in FAQs very often. We also have board meetings every month, of which we participate in facilities and finance committee updates. We will continue with that work as we move forward. Please join us on those Tuesday evenings. Thank you very much.